back to the Cine Skinny. It's the film podcast from the Skinny magazine. We are back in the nice chairs on floor D of Codebase in the consensus ugliest building in this part of Edinburgh. It's the full gang once again. It's me, Peter, with Jamie.
Hello.
Ellie.
Hello.
And Anahi.
Hello.
We are recording in the morning, so if any of us sound a little bit sleepy, it's because the kind of people who would make a film podcast every 2 weeks and insist people listen to it are exactly the kind of people who would complain about having to do work at 11:15 on a weekday morning. So
it does feel wrong, I will say.
In what sense?
I don't know.
Okay. You know what? If I had asked that question at 2 o'clock, you'd have had a perfectly cogent answer.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So that's the feeling we've got in the room today.
When would it be the ideal time to record the podcast, do you think?
4:20.
Are you serious?
Blaze it.
It's a podcast after all.
Maybe we should try like an after hours special, like where we get really drunk and just do it like midnight.
I have been saying this for ages. I think we should experiment. Where we do like a different truck each one and see what happens. But for some reason, no one takes me up.
Today's drug was coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Today is caffeine.
No.
Yeah, so please do subscribe to this podcast because your continued support allows us to consider these ideas. Edinburgh International Film Festival, book us, you cowards. Okay, so on this unfortunately substance-free edition of the Cine Skinny, we've got a couple of good films, I would say. We've got Savages, which is the new film from the Swiss stop-motion animation director Claude Barras, and we also have Dreams, the Golden Bear-winning Norwegian film by I've written it out phonetically and still got it wrong.
That's okay.
Dag Johan Haugerud.
That was really good.
Well, it says his name was Dan to begin with.
Well,
so
that's okay.
It's all right. We can
But
cut.
after that...
I was going to say we could cut all that out, but where's the fun in that? So yeah, we've got those two to come. And then because Dreams is part of a trilogy, we'll do the classic Cine Skinny flip into a conversation more generally about trilogies. That will be a fun time that everyone has definitely prepared for, and we have lots of notes on. So we'll have a good, fun time. I'm looking forward to this episode of the podcast, Ellie. I don't know about you.
I think it's going to be special.
I think that crucially special in that context is largely value free. So, Jamie, I'm going to come to you first. Before we do any of the things I've just described, we'll do an extra bit of podcasting for all of our loyal listeners. What have you been watching recently that you could talk about for a couple of minutes?
Well, at the weekend, I went along to Queer Cinema Sundays, which is the once a month event that happens at GFT, which was mentioned a few times. And they had a really cool film this month that I had never heard of. It was called Female Perversions. I don't know if you know that film. It's from 1996. It's by a director called Susan Steinfeld, and it stars Tilda Swinton. It's Tilda Swinton's first US role, I believe. And it was great. It was like so good. Like I just did not know what to expect. It was described online as a kind of 90s erotic thriller. And I guess aesthetically it kind of has that feel, and there's a few sex scenes and stuff. But it's not an erotic thriller at all. It's more of I would say it's more of a kind of art house satire on sexism and sort of gender roles. And yeah, it's just really funny and really clever. Tilda Swinton plays a lawyer who's about to be promoted to a judge. So she's under pressure because she's got this big interview coming up where she has to like prove herself. But then her sister, who's a kleptomaniac, who's played by Amy Madigan, has been arrested, and she has to keep going to help her sister out. And when she goes there, she meets all these other women, and there's not many men in the film, and it's really about women sort of in different roles. So there's like a younger woman who's like a tomboy who's having her first period. There's an older woman who's like trying to get a date, and a kind of like a burlesque auntie who's involved, and they're all just together in this house, kind of drinking and sort of sharing their woes, and it's just really funny and cool. And yeah, Tilda Swinton gives a really interesting performance. She's like very angular. There's a lot of kind of scenes of mannequin dolls in the film, and she's almost like a mannequin doll in the way she moves. Like she moves her arms. She's a very angular person, I think, and the way she moves is very angular. It's very intentional. And then it mixes in these kind of weird dream sequences, which are quite arty, of her. Every time she has sex, essentially, or has this kind of sexual fantasy, she dreams about herself walking a tightrope and having like ropes pulling her and bed sheets pulling her, and there's all these kind of like freaky imagery, and it becomes clear what this all means later. But yeah, it's just a really strange.
This sounds sick.
It's actually a crazy film, but very, very funny. And Tilda Swinton is so deadpan throughout it. Like yeah, it's hard to explain. It's not like a film I've seen before, really. It's like quite, I can see why it would maybe confuse people when it first came out, but it seems quite ahead of its time and definitely worth a watch. I thought it was fantastic.
Wonderful. Sorry, I stood on my microphone cable. Wonderful. That was Queer Cinema Sunday. What have Queer Cinema Sundays got on next? Do we know?
I believe the next film is going to be Tomboy, the Celine Sciamma film. Yeah, I think that's what they said is going to be the next one, which is a very good movie.
There we go. Hit after hit over at Queer Cinema Sundays at the GFT. Lovely stuff. Ellie, what have you got for us?
I did not prepare anything, so I was just desperately going through my letterbox there. The only thing that I could think of that I've seen recently was something that I didn't actually like, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. I watched the 2007 MTV Pro Shot of Legally Blonde the musical, which I was very curious about because there's a few kind of like 80s, 90s like rom-coms or like teen comedy dramas that kind of got adapted into musicals that have really like overtaken them. I feel like the Heathers musical has gotten like a lot bigger than Heathers the original film has, and I know that like,
which is a travesty.
yeah,
by the way.
But Mean Girls as well recently had like a big musical revival, so I decided to check it. I had a strong recommendation for the Legally Blonde one, but I think that the problem with the Legally Blonde one, because there are like, you can see how it could work. Like, what is it, the pop and snap thing from Legally Blonde?
Bend and snap.
Bend and snap. That could be its whole big number, and it does have a big number in it. But what's great about Legally Blonde is that, like, Elle Woods is a fish out of water. Like, she's very perky and sunny and, like, I don't know, very femme in Harvard Law School, where that's considered, like, inappropriate or whatever. So that's where, like, a lot of the comedy comes from and, like, a lot of the heart of the film. But the problem with it being a musical is that in a musical theatre, fucking everyone sounds like that. Like, it's not special, and she kind of gets drowned out a lot. So I was a little bit disappointed in that. But ultimately, very interesting. I don't know a lot about musical theatre. I feel like I'm going to know a lot of musical theatre people by coming at it. But yeah, I did not really enjoy it. And other than that, I've just been rewatching other, like, what's a better term for chick flick? Because that is like a term under which we kind of categorize things.
Like,
but I think
romantic comedy?
Romantic comedy of a very specific era. So I was like rewatching like 10 Things I Hate About You, and on the other side of the Atlantic, like Bend It Like Beckham, like this very specific time where it's like sort of teen marketed comedy, rom-coms, but not always rom-coms. They're very flawed films, particularly the two I just mentioned that I watched over the weekend. Bend It Like Beckham is insane. Bend It Like Beckham has the Irish football coach who is incredibly sinister and like gives really, really red flag vibes as he like has a romantic tryst with the teenage girls that he's coaching.
Yeah.
And then when she's like, oh, they've racially microaggressioned me. Not even like they called me a slur. And he's like, of course I know how that feels. I'm Irish.
That's
and I'm
such
like,
an iconic line.
that could not be further from the point. And he's just so like weird. Every fucking Irish person I know has like a good crack. And this guy is just giving bad vibes at all times. But you kind of have to just pretend that doesn't exist in the film because it's such a great film outside of it.
I know exactly what you're saying, but there's such a funny bad faith interpretation of what you've just said, which is like a cinema sins type thing of being like, oh, this is a plot hole because as we all know, the Irish are great.
But in this film as well, which is such like a fun, great film, it's weird that like...
Maybe he's Northern Irish. They can be a bit angry.
That is true, actually, yeah.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. But
I didn't know that Ian Paisley was the football coach.
Should we cut this?
No.
That's allowed. You're allowed to say that Northern Irish are a bit crazy.
I'm from a Northern Irish family, so...
Yeah,
okay.
no,
I'm allowed.
It's true, yeah.
Some of my best friends in Northern Irish.
But it also same with...
Also, you know what? If we get a phone call from Ian Paisley, I will be impressed.
I did that. Yeah, so other than that, like, yeah, 10 Things I Hate About You also has kind of like the flaw in that it is adapted from Shakespeare's most misogynistic play, and that DNA does kind of exist. Lots of like long discussions about who exactly deserves to get the girl at the end that is completely separate from whether or not the girl wants to get with any of these people.
Yeah. But it is also a perfect
But
film.
it is also incredible. Like it is interesting that it's kind of like you're watching this and you're like, we're just going to ignore that bit. That there is just a problem in the film and it's working against what the film itself is trying to do. So it's like, the film is wrong. I'm right. But just an interesting experience, an interesting time for cinema.
Wonderful. Did they ever make a 10 Things I Hate About You musical?
Oh, almost certainly. It sounds like the kind of thing that would be at the Fringe. I was just thinking when you were saying about that, there's always like a Cruel Intentions musical, like a kind of jukebox musical, at like fucking George Square or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so many of those, and I think some of them do go on to be.
Did they make like a sequel to 10 Things I Hate About You, like recently?
Yes, but like a bad one.
I wouldn't have
think.
assumed it was good.
But yeah, I think that was definitely a conversation at one point. I'm pretty sure, but I thought it was a while ago.
11 Things I Hate About You.
10 more things I hate about you. Anahit, while you tell us what you've been watching, I will look up and see whether there has been a 10 things I hate about you sequel.
Okay.
This is multitasking on the podcast.
Okay. I watched Todd Haynes' Safe, which was very good. I watched it at 10 o'clock in the morning, which was a crazy time to watch that film.
You really turned over a new leaf. You're such a morning person now.
Yeah.
You're here. Other things are occurring.
I'm so tired right now. I don't know if it's really working for me. I think I might need to go back. It's this really fascinating film where Julianne Moore plays a housewife in, I think, the 80s. And she slowly just becomes ill with this like unexplained, undiagnosable illness. She keeps like going to like doctors and they don't know what's wrong with her. And then kind of she gets a little bit embroiled in this like wellness cult almost. And I thought it was so fascinating as a kind of, it was made in the mid-90s, but as that kind of like a marker of modernity and how we start to almost be allergic to like our surroundings, our environment, and like allergic to like the gender roles that we've been given and like to capitalism. And it's like a really cool, really interesting exploration of that is like shot like a horror film. Like I found it so disturbing, but nothing really ever happens. And she's so great. I forgot what a great face she has. Like she's just, I don't know. Yeah. So I really, really like that. And then otherwise I just finished Lena Dunham's new Netflix series.
Oh my God, I hated that so much.
I both hated it and liked it.
I've only done 2 episodes, but I just found it almost unwatchable.
Yeah. I really get that. Yeah, there were bits of it that I was like, oh, this is actually really, really clever what it's doing. And then whole bits of it where I was like, I cannot believe that the person that made Girls made this film or this TV show. Like, that's fucking crazy. And it kind of really oscillates between those two things. I found the girl in it so annoying. I found everyone in it annoying, but I found her so annoying. But I think that was also kind of the point. But I think unlike Girls, where they're very unlikable, and that's kind of the point. And you're meant to like question actually what your relationship is to that sort of like likable female character. With this one, it felt like it went to like the really most reductive way that this discourse has become, where she is just like, there's nothing really that complex. She's just kind of annoying. And then we're not meant to find her that way. I don't know. I just found it a bit like, it felt a lot more like, oh, messy female characters in a way that Girls was a really complex subversion actually of that idea. So yeah, I don't know what I thought of it.
I did wonder if like, if Lena Dunham was younger and was reading those lines, it would make sense, you know, like it's just like, I wonder if it's just like her stuff only really works from her, because it's just like, nobody was like pulling off the kind of like, I mean, I think actually a lot of the other characters were quite good, like really Will Sharp.
Oh my gosh.
I like,
so sexy.
what's his name? The blonde comedian who's one in the
Leo Wright.
Leo Wright, he's very funny. Every line he says is funny. So there's funny things in it. Like all the kind of supporting cast was good, but yeah, just the main character, she can sort of, everything just felt flat when she said it.
Yeah, there was a weird kind of intonation that she had when she spoke. That was, I don't know. Yeah, I found
it's like
it
there was a
very
joke here,
odd.
but she's not delivered it.
Yeah,
in the way
yeah.
that Lena Dunham would have like, I'd be rolling around the floor for that line, you know.
Yeah. I found it quite strange. But then there were bits of it that I thought were really, really clever and were like smuggling something really clever into a very kind of normative genre. But yeah, I don't know how I felt about it really, but I watched it.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Lovely stuff. It turns out that as of May 2025, a sequel to 10 Things I Hate About You was in development called 10 Things I Hate About Dating. And it is apparently based on Moliere's The Misanthrope or the Cantankerous Lover.
Ooh.
And it is part of a planned sequel trilogy that will include 10 Things I Hate About Marriage and 10 Things I Hate About Kids.
Oh, they're
Wow.
doing like a whole like
But the whole point,
10 Things I Hate About Cinematic Universe.
but then is the whole point of the name rhymes with Taming of the Shrew.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make sense.
10
You'd
things
have
I
to
hate
call
about-
it whatever the Moliere thing. What was the?
So it has to be something that rhymes with lover. That's your background task for the rest of this episode. Also, the director expressed hopes that cast from the original movie would reprise their roles. He acknowledged that while Heath Ledger cannot appear in the new installment, there will be reference and tribute made to the deceased actor.
Oh, good Lord.
Nothing gets past this guy, does it?
Fucking hell.
As good a time as any to move on to the next bit. Okay, first review of the week is Savages, which is the new film from Swiss director Claude Barras, who you might remember from the excellent stop-motion animation My Life as a Courgette. This is another stop-motion. It follows Keria, who is a teenage girl living in Borneo with her French father. After an orangutan is killed by workers at the local palm oil plantation, Keria takes this baby orangutan that was with the mother at the time under her wing, gives it the name Oshi, and kind of like tries to form a bond with this little orangutan. Meanwhile, in the forests above the town, Keria's maternal family, who all live in the jungles outside the plantation, are fighting against the continued deforestation, logging, and general bastardry of the advancing colonial capitalists. Ellie, I will come to you first, as we have discussed many times in this podcast. Animation is your passion.
Yeah.
When it comes to the pod. So
Yeah.
I will let you go first. What did you think of this one?
I liked it. I mean, I hadn't seen My Life as a Courgette, but yeah, no, there's lots to like about this film. Like, animated cinema in general has always kind of had this thing where it focuses on the relationship that we have with the natural world. Like, it's always had anthropomorphized characters, and then in some instances it's more specifically like moral or educational, like Fern Gully or something like Bambi, maybe. Miyazaki's films, yeah, like Nausicaa and stuff like that. Even like TV shows like Captain Planet are all kind of like educating people, usually children, about like environmentalism and how to, like, I don't know, have a responsible relationship with the environment. Even recently, like Flow has been about that, which got Oscars and was like very, very good and felt very fresh and new, like a sort of up-to-date take on this. So there's a really big kind of precedent for this sort of film, and this is very specific. This is very, you know, targeted at the palm oil industry and how that affects certain places in the world, certain communities in the world. So I think that it's a great kind of like little educational tool. It does a lot well. It looks gorgeous. The design is absolutely incredible. I think that when we discussed Memoir of a Snail, I was talking about how like stop motion animation is really like fueled by passion. It's like a labor of love. Like, it requires just a long, like years and years of hands-on work with practically every aspect of the shot of the characters, how they move, how they talk, even blinking. And it just, you know, you get a real sense of the effort put in, especially when the characters pop as much as they do in this. If I had to say that they sort of like reminded me of anything, some of them maybe remind me a little bit of Aardman animations. They've all kind of got, I don't know, quite nice big goofy grins, but really well designed, and every character sort of stands out, and it has a really interesting, it just has a really sort of interesting visual language with all of the animals that we see. But just beautifully done. I would say maybe where it fell a little bit short for me was that, like, it didn't necessarily feel like it was pushing the boat out that much with regards to the plot. Like, it does feel a little bit tropey at certain times. Like, as I say, this is something that we've kind of seen before in film. Even the very beginning, like the opening scene where we have this sort of orangutan whose mother dies, feels very Bambi. We have a main character who has this heritage with the community. I've written it down, the indigenous community in Borneo, the Penan people. And it's sort of like she's very disconnected from her heritage there. She sort of doesn't think anything of it. She just sort of wants to be a normal teen girl. And sometimes that comes out in like quite a nasty way. So you can see the very clear sort of arc that she has to go on. She kind of reconnects with her heritage. She has this sort of like coming of age ritual, which really radicalizes her against the abuses of the flora, the fauna, and the indigenous communities in Borneo. And yeah, like, so sometimes it can feel a little bit like it's not necessarily doing anything that revolutionary, particularly when we've had a film like Flow out, which is taking some like radical steps to tell these stories again and again. But I would say that just with how fantastic it looks and kind of how watchable it is and how still relevant it is, it would probably be a great film to show to like younger audiences, to have a little bit of education in how these things work. But I enjoyed it. It had a lot of humor. It had a lot of like memorable characters. There's this one sort of like, you know, activist who's come to join them, and she's like very mental and just flips off whenever like we have these capitalists pass by. I can't remember what she calls them, white collar vultures. That's great. And just is very like rude and flippant and has great energy. The animals are sort of anthropomorphized and they get up to all sorts of hijinks. But yeah, like quite touching. Not necessarily anything hugely groundbreaking, but I had a good time watching this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about it that I found, I don't know what you thought about this, Jamie, and you kind of alluded to this a bit already, Ellie, it's that it did have a lot going on for what is ostensibly a kid's film, but does kind of manage to handle all these different threads relatively well. I've just put a bunch of words in your mouth. Feel free to take them out if you so choose.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was a really nice film. It's like, I'm all up for kids' films that deal with like quite dark subjects and educate young people on the dangers of capitalism and, like how we're destroying rainforests. It does seem a bit like slightly out of date. I think maybe this says something about how long it takes to make films in stop motion. Like, I feel like the palm oil discussion was like really rampant like 5 years ago. Like we're really, that was when I was first becoming aware like palm oils and everything, and it's like it is like, and I don't know if it's that it's been solved or we've just like moved on to other things.
Yeah,
like
I feel
we
have just moved on.
I feel like nobody discusses it anymore. But yeah, there was like a year where I basically was checking everything to make sure there's no palm oil on it. But yeah, I think it's really great to make a film that's speaking directly to the issues of the world. And to me, the pleasure of this is just how beautiful it is. Yeah, I think it's just absolutely stunning film. Like the models, the design, I completely agree, Ellie. It's also, I don't know if it's because stop motion, just the nature of it, it's a bit slower paced. I feel like sometimes animation nowadays is a bit hyperactive and it feels like it has to just go at 100 miles a minute. I quite enjoyed how this had a real kind of gentle pace, and my favourite scenes in this were actually just people sitting around and chatting, or the incidental scenes where it will go off and just look at the jungle and you'll see like a frog trying to get his dinner, or like a monkey catching a spider and eating it, or like a panther just chilling out. I just liked luxuriating in this kind of world of like claymation, which is beautifully rendered. So yeah, I think I wouldn't say it's as like I did love Claude Barras is his film is the name.
Yeah,
his previous film My Life as a Courgette, which was actually written coincidentally by Celine Sciamma, who was the director and writer of Tomboy. So that film, I think, had a much more emotional punch. I remember really watching that and it was a total gut punch. It was a much more kind of like visceral film and like heartbreaking film. This didn't quite push that across, but I was really charmed by it. And yeah, I would really encourage, it's definitely say take children, but I think adults would get something from it as well. Don't expect it's going to be a very complex dealing of the subject, but it's just a really beautiful film to watch, I say.
Yeah, what did you think, Annie? I personally love a bit of anti-colonial sentiment in my animation, so it's nice to see them pulling out all the stops.
It was really nice. I really, really liked how it thought about like that doubled violence of colonialism, which is against like the land and against indigenous people, right? Like it's kind of framing them as like inextractable from each other, which I haven't seen a lot in films, and definitely not like a lot in children's films. Although, as you said, there is like a kind of legacy of that in animation, but this was just like so explicit. And I thought that was actually really, really interesting. I loved like the kind of tenderness with which it showed that community. I loved how like for a kid's film, how like earthy and visceral it was. There are many scenes of breastfeeding in this one, which you just don't see, which is also very Belgian / French. But I really loved how it wasn't afraid of the idea of the body or the idea of violence, like showing it in kind of small ways. Or yeah, the spiders that keep getting their legs pulled off by the little monkey that eats them. There is a kind of sense of like, this is like what it means to like have a body and be of the earth. And I thought that was really, really interesting. I did think it got a little like, the only way to really resist anything is nonviolence towards the end, which like is whatever, that's a kind of political position. But I was thinking of when we watched How to Blow Up a Pipeline and the kind of difference between those two things and what it would be like actually to make a kid's film that is How to Blow Up a Pipeline quoted. I know, do you know what I mean? To like bring some of that in. It was just a little bit, after everything that it had done, it just felt like it was being very like, okay, but like only in this way, which was like, it's fine, whatever. But I still thought it was, for for a children's film, like politically really interesting, looks really, really beautiful. Just has a really interesting visual language, and also just, I don't know. I thought it was just like really lovely.
It's also a little bit naive in that, not to spoil things, but the resolution involves like protests. And,
exactly. Exactly. And social media.
Capitalists give a fuck about protests.
Yeah.
And would change their model because of some sort of online sort of...
Yeah.
I've seen this in other things. If anybody saw Years and Years, which was the series run by Russell T Davies a couple of years ago, which was about like a dystopian British future, and the day is saved when essentially activists are able to like film what's happening and share it with the world, and that exposes just how far. And it's like, but that actually happens.
Yeah,
like, that does actually happen, and it doesn't really do anything. So it's kind of like, it is, not necessarily the most climactic ending to the film.
No, I think it is just a bit of a liberal fantasy, right? That like that sort of form of like expression, and that's also quite an artistic thing. And I think it's something that artists across various media have a big problem with, where they think that by expressing something, you have done an action. And that unfortunately is not true. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, I don't think we're quite there yet where our animated films are going to encourage children to set fire to things.
Talk about Earth. There's a great scene where there's a kind of standoff between the kind of indigenous villagers and the kind of like the French. Where they're trying to give them money and they throw it down.
And she pisses on the floor.
Which is great. But then you've got like quite an extended scene of the French guy like grubbing around for the money. Covered in piss. It's like, oh, that's brilliant to see like a capitalist like. He's like into the money, but he's going to go around in the dirt for it.
Yeah, it may not teach children how to blow up a pipeline, but it will teach children to flip off capitalists, which is a good start.
Yeah, it is a good start, for sure. But yeah, I just thought it was really, like, looked really beautiful, felt... I don't know, watching it, I was like, oh, this feels like special. It feels like the kind of film that you would stumble across at a film festival. And maybe I was thinking this because it was at LFF this year, but I missed it. And you'd just be kind of like a bit surprised and a bit like, oh, this is nice. Like the potential of cinema.
The potential of cinema. Savages is out this weekend. It's out on the 1st of August. It's on at the GFT, and I'm not exactly sure where else it's on, but it'll be on other places. I just know for a fact it's on the GFT. How good is it out of 5? Jamie?
Yeah, I think it's really good. It's I'd probably give it a 3.5. It's like just a very solid, beautiful film that, is not going to change the world, but I think it's a really enjoyable 90 minutes to spend with it, I would say.
Nice. Ellie?
I would also say 3.5, yeah.
Nice.
Me too.
Cool. Well, I'll agree with all of that. Lovely stuff. Right, second film. Dreams, or Drømmer in the original Norwegian. So this is the Golden Bear winning film from Norwegian director Dag Johan Haugerud. Joanne is a high schooler in Oslo who has fallen head over heels in love with her new French teacher called Joanna. Joanne writes everything down, and while she is trying to process it all, her mother and grandmother come across the text and approach the situation in vastly different ways. Now, I have to possibly inaugurate a segment of the podcast called Peter's Disambiguation Corner. So, this film is part of a trilogy of films by Dag Johan Haugerud that have been dubbed the Oslo Stories Trilogy. Now, this is not to be confused with the Oslo Trilogy of films by fellow Norwegian director Joachim Trier. Now, this film won the Golden Bear at the 2024 Berlin Film Festival, where it screened in competition against another film that was also called Dreams, that had Jessica Chastain and Rupert Friend in it. And it won. So it must be good if it's beating a film that has famous people from Hollywood in it. So yeah, Annie, this is a story about a young woman coming of age, queer discovery, things of this nature. You said in a bit that has presumably been edited out that I was coming to you first because, quote, this film was about girlies. I want it on the record that I didn't say this first, but I have said it now. As you are, what did you reckon?
No, I think that's fair. I think it is a very me-coded film. I thought this was really, really beautiful in ways that kind of almost go beyond language.
Well, that's good for an audio medium.
I know.
Do you want to do some dance or like a little painting?
Yeah, kinda, yeah. It's such a beautiful film about trying to capture a feeling. So the ways that you kind of see this 17-year-old girl, she's at school, and then this teacher walks in who isn't like technically a teacher, really. She's a visual artist. She's a textile artist, and she's like taking this class for the first time. And the way that you see her like respond for the first time to this teacher, and the way that this obsession then like builds. And it's just one of the best, or like, I don't know, one of the best, yeah, like in a really long time that I've seen, that captures that idea of what it means to like fall in love with someone and be thinking about them all the time, and the kind of tactility of that, and the kind of shared co-presence of that, and the, yeah, like the title of it, that kind of fantastic element of it, is so well done. It's shot in this really like appropriately dreamy way. Like the lighting is really soft. This woman is a textile artist, so she just wears these really gorgeous,
Oh my God, those jumpers.
the knitwear shit, but like these kind of very gauzy like things that she's like knitted and crocheted. Everything is just like really soft. And yeah, you can kind of see how this girl like falls in love with her. I did have some very big questions about how the Norwegian schooling system and child safeguarding works.
Oh my God, the school looks amazing though.
The school looks amazing, but really they can really get away with things. That was crazy. That was crazy to me, but anyway, whatever. So yeah, you kind of see how she falls in love, and then the kind of beginning of the film is her narrating that, and then it becomes clear that she's like written it down. And then she shows, because she's had like such a like life-changing experience that actually for her goes beyond language. Like you called it like, yeah, this queer coming of age moment, and it is that. But at one point when her grandmother suggests that to her, or her mother, she's like, is that what it was? Like for her, it is just this very unique experience, like really subjective, really like intimate. And so she tries to capture and write it down, and she just wants to share it with someone to make it real in a way, to have like a witness to that. And so then her grandmother reads it, who then insists that her mother reads it, and they become really obsessed with, this is so well written, we need to publish it in a way. And so then it becomes actually quite a lot about like, how do you turn these like really intimate moments, these really subjective moments into art? And is that something, how do you do that under capitalism? How do you do that within kind of the structures of creating art that exist? And does that then like fragment all of the things that you were like feeling? And it's actually, I don't know, I just thought there was so much complexity and layers to this film that is not very long, and that actually just features quite a lot of quite extended bits of people talking. It's like quite playish in that way. Like especially there were bits where like just the mother and the grandmother were talking, and it really felt like a play in that you're discovering something, but in this very tangential, very like dialogic way. I don't know, I thought that was really fascinating. There's this analogy the whole way through about that bit in the Bible, Jacob's ladder, which was his vision, I think, of like a stairway to heaven, essentially. And there are these really fucking incredible constant shots of stairs in the film that are kind of, like the plot like hinges on of her like going up and going down places. And so, yeah, this idea of like ascending to like this state of fantasy and then having to be brought back down to earth. I know, like the visual language of it, the writing, the direction, the performances, like Ella Overby, that is not how you say that. I can't speak Norwegian. But yeah, she is fucking incredible. She just has this incredible, like really expressive face, even actually when what she's expressing is like a lack of, I don't know. I just thought it was so, yeah, I don't know. I thought it was really beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing. And she, Ella Overby reminds me a lot of Renate Reinsve.
Yeah.
In that way of like...
The Norwegian.
Let me finish. Yeah, both capable of expressing quite a lot, but often in quite a minimal way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the staircase thing is actually really interesting because like it does tie into this thing of a lot of the dreams of the title and of the rest of the film, because every time they show the staircase it looks different. Mm-hmm. Like it'll be shrouded in clouds so it looks like it's in the middle of nowhere, and then it'll be incredibly long, and then they'll cut to a shot that just shows it is just a staircase.
Yeah.
when the grandmother's having a conversation with like a publishing friend and they're just walking up the stairs.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is just a staircase.
But then there's
Yeah.
also the staircase in the apartment building, which is like
the angular
crossing.
one.
Yeah.
That was it's like an Escher painting or something. And I think that's another thing this film does really, really well is that kind of the subjectivity of desire, of like you see things in different states. So there's this like really fascinating scene, like not to get too much into it, but where the mother meets the teacher for the first time, and the teacher suddenly seems different, and she's being viewed through someone else's eyes, and so that rush of like desire and love makes you see people differently, and that actually isn't a flaw of it. That is part of the reality of it, and it does a really good job. And I think the staircase is also part of that, in that there are times where it's like dreamy, but then there are times where it is just like a pragmatic thing that you used to go somewhere. And I don't know, I just thought it was so clever.
I think we're about to enter into full Edinburgh Fringe and Edinburgh Festival mode. And I think the talk of this being like playish in parts is quite kind of apt, because I think really good like work with often like limited budgets and limited casts, it manages to do this thing of recasting objects or places or actors in a different light just by the skill of the directing or the cinematography. And when you actually think about this film, Ellie, it only really has like 4 or 5 characters in it, and it only really has 2 or 3 locations in it.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the background work is either done by Oslo just looking cool, or by this kind of like overall kind of like dreamy wash that like the director is like Dag Johan Haugerud. I wrote it out phonetically. I'm going to get as much use out of it as I can. Seems to be able to like have this real ability to change the mood from scene to scene in a way that isn't overly showy and isn't trying to do too much with it.
You're so right. It's structured really well, and it has really great use of perspective, because I think the first act, where she's just falling in love with her teacher, feels really emotionally intense, and it does feel like this, not to get too much into like stair metaphor, but like this ascent, like you're getting high, because she's so fixated, and it's done in such an unbelievably like relatable way, the way in which she falls in love with her teacher, that will like transport you right back to that very intense feeling of like, I don't know, like being a high schooler falling in love for the first time. Like I think that she says something along the lines of like, you know, a day wasn't worth it if I didn't just get to see her. And she fixates on like the way she rolls up her sleeves, up her arm and stuff like that. All these like really fine details, this great sense of hyper focus. And again, like crafted in that like very beautiful, very like Scandi sort of mise en scène where everything's very soft, everything's very light. So it is like an incredible film to watch in that first act, because like it was really getting me, of being like taking me back to those feelings. But then as the film goes on, it sort of opens up to the characters of the mother and the grandmother and their roles in this. And that really like brings us down. Like almost as soon as they begin to kind of like, I don't know, weigh in on what this narrative is and try and like tell her, oh, you've written it all down, like you need to publish it, you need to send it to a publisher. And it becomes this thing that's no longer for her. It's no longer just like her heart, her feelings. It's something outside of herself. And it's something that in a way it sometimes feels like she's being pushed to move away from. And that's like strange. It leaves the character, not to give away too much again, but like it leaves her very like apathetic. You realize that she's an intense protagonist because she was practically obsessed with her teacher. It's like more than just like a crush. She's like very deeply in love and transformed by this love. So to have this like story of hers become something that needs to be commodified, it really does kind of like, I don't know, like ruin the mystery. And I feel like her internal dialogue acknowledges that like a big part of it is her not knowing how the teacher would respond or how she would feel. And like you say, there's this scene where the mother speaks to the teacher, and if we have been like empathizing with Joanne the whole time, or Joanna, who's the teenager?
Joanne's the teenager.
Yeah.
Joanne, like we're empathizing with Joanne, but then it's kind of like robbed from us because the mother and grandmother are just sort of like trying to find out what this story means outside of its very like primal, very like youthful feelings. And then there is like a much wider and much more complicated sort of structure that emerges to me, which she describes not a lot, but just sort of here and there, of like the fact that it's about unrequited love in lots of different life stages. So the mother is like kind of obsessed with social media in a way that I think is suggested that she's like looking for connection. And the grandmother is incredibly horny and has no filter and is just looking for one last shag. So it's sort of about unfulfilled desire at all these different phases of life, and it becomes like a much grander scheme, but at the same time there's maybe something a little bit melancholy about that, maybe something a little bit like, I don't know, slightly like cynical or bittersweet about the fact that this huge transformative experience that Joanne has had is really just one step in a stairwell through life that we all go through and that we all kind of like live in different interpretations and versions of.
Top-notch metaphor work there, Ellie. Stuck to landing. 10 out of 10. Jamie, what did you reckon?
I agree. I thought it was an absolute knockout of a film. And because it just surprised me all the way through, like the first, you say it's like a play, it's also quite literary. Like obviously she's writing a book, but it's like we're just having a narration. Like I think the first 20 minutes is all narration. There's like almost no dialogue scenes, and it's her. Yeah, it's like this obsession, this, you know, and she's getting deeper and deeper, and it's very earnest. You know, it's like a young girl's, you know, falling in love for the first time and being obsessed. You know, it's like, and we're stuck in our heads so much. I did start to think, okay, is this all fantasy? Is she making this up? I had all these questions, and then the film starts to answer those questions as soon as someone else reads it. You know, so like, there's a great scene where, you know, all the way through there's been this kind of really insistent score that's built and built and built, and it feels like it's drawing you in. And then the mum, I think it's the mum is reading it, and it's building and building. You think, oh my God, there's going to be a big melodramatic moment where she gets really angry or something. And then she says, oh, can you just turn that music off? and then the grand goes over and switches the music off. And then the film completely changes, and it's like, and then it becomes them, the mother and a little bit of the mum and the grandmum actually chatting about how they feel about it. And it becomes, and it opens up all the questions you've been asking yourself as you watch this. They start having that same conversation. It's so smart that way, and it's very funny. Like I love those scenes of the mother and the grandmother chatting. Like there's a scene where they go foraging in the woods or something, and they start having an argument about Flashdance, and it's like, I was just killing myself laughing. And but then it starts, like I say, is this kind of like really serious, earnest film about love. But it goes in so many different directions. I love one of the fantasies the Gran has towards the end as well. But yeah, what I like about the film is that after kind of, like I say, upending and bringing everything down, at the end it actually ends up actually taking what, like, first love very seriously. You know, I thought, oh, it's going to undercut it and say actually she was a fantasist or she was abused. You know, you think of, you start to imagining worse films in your head as you watch it, and actually the film is much smarter than I am and has a lot better ideas of how the film is going to up. And actually it says, actually first love is really important, and maybe it is real. You know, even if the person, the object of affection isn't worth that love or doesn't even understand that love, it is kind of worth it in the end. And I thought that was really smart. And it also has like, it was just a really film full of textures. Like I love how it looks. I love the jumpers. I love how like you say, those scenes, there's like also early scenes with in the apartment of the woman she loves are very gauzy and warm, and you know, it's full of fabric. And then she goes back later and it looks like an IKEA ad. Like the apartment's completely changed. And has she redecorated, or has the young girl just imagined it all? You know, or this is because she was so infatuated, the world looks different somehow. So yeah, it's just a really smart film. Like so clever, you know, using cinema to its full extent, you know, like in really interesting ways. And it just also is a really interesting look at a kind of family. There's almost no men apart in the film as well, which is quite interesting. For a film that's so talky and explains a lot, explains a lot about emotion, also doesn't over-explain stuff as well. So we never actually know why the dad's not around really, you know, and you get the sense of like this family history and this kind of really kind of grown up family essentially of women who have like kind of have actually quite forward-thinking emotions. It's like, I mean, I don't know if it's just a Norwegian thing or this family, but just like the way they discuss sex and love is like so grown up and so mature. Like, it's really refreshing, I thought.
Yeah, and I think the thing about it that I really appreciated is that it does this thing of, it says that dreams are real, but they're also not real. And it says that, like the things that you dream about or imagine or fantasize about, or the things that you want in either consciously or subconsciously, are like worth discussing and worth taking seriously, but they are also different from corporeal reality. But that doesn't mean that one of them is better than the other one. So yeah, I think it's a really, really good. It's a really, really good film. It's nice when we get one of those, isn't it? It's always a fun time.
I will say it makes me really want to see the other two.
Yes.
And supposedly, I've just read a bit about it. The only thing that really links the other two is the psychiatrist who appears towards the end of this film. She goes to see a counsellor or something.
I believe he's the only man, other than a bit part for another teacher, I think he's maybe the only, what you would say, man actual character in the film.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
And
that
that's
does explain something.
That's also quite a funny scene, I think. But I think he's the link between all three films. So yeah, I want to dig in and see the rest.
So, Dreams is actually getting a decent release because it's on at the Film House and the GFT from this Friday, and then it'll be on the DCA from the 15th, 16th, like a couple of weeks after, basically once it's done its run in Edinburgh and Glasgow. So what did everyone think? I think we're looking at high numbers for this one. Big ones.
Yeah.
Out of 5. Jamie.
I'd maybe say a 4.5. I thought this is really good. I'm sure it'll be among my favourites of the year.
Yeah, I would say a 4.5. I feel like I'm still processing it, and maybe it will become a 5 at some point.
Ellie's going to go back upstairs and write down all their feelings about it. Annie.
Yeah, let's say 4.5.
You know what? I'll agree with all of you again.
Has this ever happened before?
I don't think so. I think I'm just looking for the easy way to end the segment.
And I should say the other two are out this month as well. They're all coming out quite close to each other. So I think I don't know.
Yeah, because I think this was the middle one when they initially came out in Norway. Because I only say that because at the start the title comes up and it says sex, dreams, love, and then the other two disappear. So I can only assume this is the middle film of the three.
Yeah, although it was released I think third because the first one was Sex. It played at Venice last year.
Really?
No, sorry. The first one, Sex, played at Berlin last year. Then Love played at Venice, and then this played at Berlin again. So they've all been released within like a year's cycle. And I believe GFT might be doing a triple bill as well.
Ooh.
Which
That would be crazy.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out soon enough. Go to the GFT website. Dreams is very good. Go and watch it. Okay, and for a final little bit, because we talked about Dreams, part of a trilogy, we're going to talk more generally about trilogies. Now, Jamie, I have a question for you. We came to Ellie on animation. We came to Anahit on
Women.
and emotions and books and all that caper. Now we're coming to Jamie on all of other film stuff. Right, is sometimes trilogies are kind of ad hoc, sometimes they're planned. Sometimes a trilogy is 3 films that are connected, but they don't tell the same story. Sometimes a trilogy is one story in a long continuation. But maybe a better question then, maybe I'll rephrase it. What makes a good trilogy good?
okay.
You were so excited about that question.
I thought it was a good one.
I didn't quite understand it, but that's my fault. I let you all down. Maybe what's a good trilogy? I guess a good trilogy is a trilogy that builds on ideas. Like I think that's my favourite type of trilogies are the ones where the first film is usually like the prototype almost, like the director working through an idea. The second one, they usually build on it, and then the third one, they usually smash it apart and do something completely different. So films that like that would be something like the Mad Max trilogy, like the first 3 films. So Mad Max, very stripped back, low budget. The second one is essentially the same film, but like in a more kind of even more kind of like dystopic kind of setting with better stunts. And then the third one just goes off the rails and brings in Tina Turner and like becomes a much bigger universe. Or something like Back to the Future. Like I like Back to the Future because everyone has a different kind of like space. One's in the 50s, one's in the future, and then one's back in the past. So I'm not a big fan of just trilogies that are the same character doing similar things. Like, I get a bit like I don't return to like Die Hard, for example, because I feel like they are essentially the same 3 films. Like the third one I guess is a bit different. But I like a trilogy that builds and sort of explores and digs into ideas. Also, I love Romero's Dead trilogy. I think that's a really good one in that it uses the zombies to explore different ideas. So the first one's very much about racism in the 60s. The second one's very much about consumerism and capitalism in the 70s, and the third one's very much like military, like powers and oversight, and that's set in the 80s. So yeah, I like a film that kind of builds. I would say. Yeah,
I suppose that has led me on to a better version of my initial question. So thank you very much, Jamie. See, he's done it, sorted it out. Good podcasting. Because often when you see, so here's an example: Toy Story, right? you make one Toy Story film and that turns out it's successful, so you want to make another one. And then in order to resolve the melody or complete the classic rule of threes, Edinburgh Fringe comedy, in order to complete the rule of threes, you feel like you have to then, it almost feels like there's a presumption that you'll make a third one that'll complete that bit of the story, and then that is a trilogy. But is that a trilogy, or is that just 3 films? Can anyone else think of any examples of something where it's kind of more ad hoc? Because what you're describing seems to be people intentionally making 3 films that all are connected in this way, like either thematically or they're trying to like do something different with these characters each time rather than just making the same film again because someone gave you money and asked you to do it.
So like more like an anthology-ish approach rather than like a deliberate. So kind of like Joachim Trier's. No, is that his name? Yeah. I was like, was that Lars von Trier? But no, that's a different first name. Kind of like Joachim Trier's like Oslo Trilogy.
Yeah.
I've only seen 2 of them, so I can't comment. But I guess, yeah, that has like more of a like looser thing. Who else has done
I
something
think quite
like
often
that?
you get like really good trilogies that are kind of ruined by the 4th film, you know, like, so like as much as I like Toy Story 4, I feel like Toy Story 3 ended in such a perfect way that I feel like, I should have just finished, you know, like, or like, which other one? Like Indiana Jones, I feel like that as well. Like, I really wish they hadn't made another Indiana Jones film because the first 3 are so perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, like the thing about Toy Story is that the 3rd film, what really like benefits it is that a huge amount of time has passed since the first film. Like it you know, the people who grew up watching Toy Story as kids and kind of like seeing themselves in it and the relationship they had with their toys, by the time the 3rd one came out, they would have been the same age that Andy is in that film, ready to move to college, ready to say goodbye to their childhood. So it like suits it really well that a real time sort of passage of time has occurred. The only time that I can think of in a trilogy that happens, where it feels a little bit less like there's a very clear idea of how to build up the ideas each iteration, is probably Edgar Wright's Cornetto trilogy, like 3 Flavors Cornetto trilogy, because like his first 2 films in that, though they do kind of expand in the way that Edgar Wright is like not parodying, but definitely using genre in an interesting way, or using genre in a comedic way, is Shaun of the Dead is the first one, which is like, you know, a comedy zombie film, which like really well suits his audience of, you know, 20-something slackers who love playing video games and watching horror movies, the sort of stuff that he was discussing in his series Spaced. But then, like, it does kind of advance in how he tackles a much sort of meatier genre in Hot Fuzz, which is this sort of, like, cop action film. But it still has really similar ideas of kind of, like, taking the piss out of British culture. So in Shaun of the Dead, you have the fact that, like, the zombie apocalypse is pretty much indistinguishable from before the zombie apocalypse, because everyone in Britain is just sort of, like, a zombie just cutting around doing whatever. And then in Hot Fuzz, the kind of, not to give away too much if you haven't seen it because it's a great film, but like the conceit of the mystery is like quaintness and how psychopathically people defend the quaintness of British culture. And then like the 3rd one, World's End, feels a little less cooked. It feels a little less developed as those ideas, and it feels a little less like it's inhibiting genres in such familiar ways. But it does it with an acknowledgement that like a lot of time has passed, in that it is about like British drinking culture and how like some people like really struggle with like moving out of the kind of glory days of youth and how they used to party all the time, and like how it's actually like a much sadder thing to as you get older still be like burning the candles at both ends and being in complete denial of your age. So that's an example that I can think of like there is like an idea that is kind of building, but like Toy Story, it's using an awareness of how much time has passed that maybe wasn't necessarily there at the very beginning of the trilogy, wasn't necessarily pre-planned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that idea of like time is actually really interesting. And what you were saying, Jamie, about like something that like builds on like its ideas, like it's kind of each one is like an addendum, almost like what came before. So I find I was so brave. And I finally finished the Before trilogy, which is Richard Linklater's trilogy, which started with Before Sunrise in 1995. And then he made a new one every 9 years, like with Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke, showing like the progression of this relationship. So in the first one, this American and this French girlie meet on a train. They just wander around a whole night kind of falling in love and then separate. And then they meet each other again in 9 years. And then the next one, they are married and have been together for like a long, I think they're married, but they're like been together for a really long time. And there's this really interesting quote by Ethan Hawke where he talks about the first film is about what could be, the second is about what should have been, and Before Midnight is about what it is. And so it kind of is this like dissection of what it means to love someone, to form an attachment with someone, to have a relationship with someone in like these different stages of life. And I was really scared to watch the last one because everyone was like, oh, the first two are so romantic, they're so dreamy, and then this last one, it like completely ruins that. But I actually thought there was something really, really fucking beautiful about that idea of even when that initial romance fades, like love is like a constant choice, like you're constantly choosing someone, even amidst like the conflict and the ugliness of it. And yeah, I've never really seen another filmmaker who can kind of maintain that quality across, how many years was that? Like 18 years? No. Yes? No. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It seems like one of the main ingredients of having a good trilogy is extensive forward planning.
Yeah, but then I don't think, I mean, I might be wrong, but I never got the impression that Richard Linklater planned
Yeah, I don't think so.
to make them. Like, I think each time it was that, because he also wrote them, like Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy have writing credits. So I think it's just that the three of them would come back together and something kind of beautiful would emerge. I don't know. And I think that's really lovely. Because, yeah, normally if you had made a very good film, you hadn't planned to make something else, and then you were like, what if we make another one? It would be shite.
Yeah. So are we saying that then the secret ingredient in a really good trilogy is the power of friendship?
I think the secret ingredient is just being a good filmmaker.
Yeah, well, that'll do it.
I wanted to give a shout out quickly to like loose trilogies that are just like films that are similar or explore similar themes. So like, you know, like, well, I mean, you could say David Lynch's like, they say it's Hollywood trilogy, so it'd be like Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, and Land Empire, because they're all just set in LA. But like, I want to coin one that I think is my. I had a search earlier. I can't see MD mention this, but I want to say the Jonathan Demme groovy kitsch Americana trilogy.
Ooh.
Is like, so in the late 80s he made Stop Making Sense, he made Something Wild, and he made Married to the Mob, and they're all kind of connected by David Byrne, because obviously David Byrne is obviously the lead man of Talking Heads. He provides a song to Something Wild, and he does the whole score for Married to the Mob. But they all have like a real kind of like kitsch Americana, and it's a celebration of kind of world music, but they've all got a real kind of feel good celebration of life that I feel like really draws me to these films, and means I can watch them again and again. And I think they would work really well on a triple bill, but they're not really connected by any characters. Obviously, one's a documentary, one's a thriller, one's a comedy, but they just have a kind of real kind of like, they feel like they're from the same universe, you know, like they feel like that, like they all exist in an America that's better than the America that actually is there, you know, like in a kind of dreamland of Jonathan Demme's, which I like. So
Wonderful. Well, we're coining new trilogies. We're done by 12:20.
Gorgeous.
Now we've got the whole day ahead of us, Annie. What are we going to do? More work, probably. Lovely. Anyway, so thank you, everybody. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you.
Cheers, Ellie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
just here.
We'll be back in 2 weeks talking about the Edinburgh International Film Festival. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
We're going to work out what films we're going to talk about immediately after I stop the recording. So that'll be good. If you've enjoyed this, tell people. And then make them listen to it as well. Blare out your windows into the Cowgate as all the world's arty people turn up in town. It looks like there's a cool S stain on the side of Annie Heats. I feel like this podcast has gone a bit off the rails. You know the cool S?
Oh, yeah.
It's on this side of the chair from where I'm sitting.
Oh yeah.
What?
Yeah, you can't see it from your angle, but there's
Okay.
a CNS. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.